the Apple's payment system is just totally different. It's a total nightmare. It's just completely different philosophy. And you compare that side by side with Stripe webhook payments, it's a totally different experience. And it's almost, all right, so today, welcome to I think this is going to be the 16th devlog on this application. I think today is going to just be really short because this week I really just focus on one thing, and that is integrating all the payment system into the backend system. And the main target for this one is actually the Apple webhook system, the Apple App Store payment system, and then how do you then combine that along with the Stripe payments on top of that for the web payments and stuff like that. So on Monday I talked about how this is a needed process, how it's a crucial step on the application in order to getting it out there and actually start distributing it. The problem is I don't really have any experience with the App Store payment process, and even how do you streamline from payment provider and then all the way to connecting that to your current product database, and then making sure that they're all synchronized together and making sure that the product IDs are matched and it's also stored on the database whatsoever. There's just so many things that has to happen, and that's why it kind of complicated this process a little bit. And on top of that, just not knowing how the whole webhook system and how it differs from the Stripe webhook as well, it made the whole thing a lot more complicated. Yeah, so I think one of the most difference between at least the Stripe and the App Store payments, the Stripe events are much more expanded as opposed to the App Store payments. For example, you can make changes directly on the Stripe dashboard, and then you can then sync that directly on your database. But you can't actually from my knowledge, there's no event that triggers that on your webhook for your backend. There's nothing like that on the App Store. The other big issue that I also encountered is testing locally. Also, the other one is testing it locally and also using the proper libraries. So luckily their Apple does provide a library already. But if you don't know what you're doing, it can become a little bit more complicated because there is a V1 and there's a V2. So I think most people are already on V2, and they do provide a library on this that you can actually use to then verify the transactions. How does the transaction even work from directly from the device, and how did that is sent to your server, and then how do you then turn on the server-to-server notifications on your back end. So I think it's just so many things I have to go through to enable this process, especially when just integrating it with Apple, which is so much steps to go through. And then you compare that with Stripe, it's 10 times more. I guess it's kind of a bit more difficult if you're a first timer. So that's I'm just reflecting it from what has happened in the last couple of days, because one of my big issues actually is that there's no way of testing it locally, as opposed to when you're performing your local test on your Stripe webhook payments. There's nothing like that on the Apple's version. And so I tried to do different things. I tried to change the URL on the App Store Connect page. Nothing happened, even though I'm already using the right certificate authorities, the right IDs and stuff like that. Nothing happens. I tried multiple ways of and then I found out that you can actually use the library that they provide to then send a test notification. But then again, that library doesn't provide you custom. It doesn't let you send custom events that you can actually test directly on your back end, which kind of it sort of just defeats the purpose of testing it. And so what I found is that the Apple's payment system is just a little bit more I don't you could say it's less developer friendly, because I could tell you it's much more yeah, it's not a pre-process. That's all I can say. And you compare that side by side with Stripe webhook payments, it's a totally different experience, and it's almost as if I've taken for granted the Stripe webhook process because how easy it is and how seamless it is to just test it locally, and then you jump into a different platform. It's totally different. It's a total nightmare. It's just completely different philosophies. And then you have to, and then apparently, so you can't even the other issue is that you can't even test it. You can't test the back end payments while you're on Xcode. You can only test it if, I think from my understanding, you can only test it if once you're on a sandbox server. I think once you've already released the external beta tests, I think. I may be wrong, but because that's kind of where I'm now, so I need to test the whole each of the events, but all the integrations, all the keys, and all the securities all connected. I think what I'm finding is that if you're able to optimize and sync your database with Stripe webhook payments, and all the events there, in my opinion, it's a much easier way of then integrating it's much easier to do that first before then taking on the App Store payments, because this thing it's just a different piece. I think what you just need to work on is to be able to have a product and product ID mapping directly underneath your product, so that you can make sure which payment provider that it's intended for, and then you can map that together with the actual product target, and then use that through your user entitlements. I'm not going to get into the technical details because that's also where I'm at. So that's it. So that's one for today. So it's more complicated than I would expect when dealing with the Apple payments. And also, I'm not even talking about the Apple Pay, which is a different thing that you have to implement on top of your App Store integration. So yes, I think that's the main technical aspect for this week. I think what I've also started working on for this week is, since I'm sort of preparing myself for the App Store, for releasing this on the App Store, I'm kind of surrounding myself more with App Store related videos. So I've been studying App Store optimizations, and how to actually launch your application on the App Store, and how does the App Store even work, stuff like that. How does the algorithm work? I think one of the best ones I've seen so far is probably a pre-marketing list that they recommend that you implement. So is finding popular social media networks, creating a website landing page, putting together a press kit, and making a demo video, which is also work in progress of mine. Coming up with content marketing strategies, and the biggest one so far in this list is working with micro influencers. So that's very interesting. I thought I wanted to share that. Look, I think the application already is ready. It's just integrating it with the payment process on the app is way more complicated than I expected to be, especially when you just compare it with Stripe and then the App Store payments. It's completely different. So yeah, so again, this week I finished integrating the App Store payments, but it just requires even more testing, because this one is a different thing to handle if you're just kind of new to this. The next one, the other thing that I need to work on for this week is just finishing the testing on finalizing internal testing, and then coming up with the demo video, because that's also going to be a difficult process. Other than that, it's That's it. That's it. So if you're interested in if you're interested in how I speed up my backend system, check